Me.
I call the Honourable Member Gareth Hughes. Tēnā koe.
Tēnā koe, Mr Speaker. Kia ora, na mihi nui kia koutou. Kia ora. I rise to take a call on the Appropriation Estimates Bill third reading and Imprest Supply second reading, part of Budget 2012. Mr Speaker, when the government was elected in 2008, they inherited a budget and an economy which was seriously out of balance, a country that was living beyond its means, and a country that was then rocked by catastrophic earthquakes. Mr Speaker, now, in its second term, we can measure how the government's responded to these significant strategic challenges. This government has had an opportunity to remake our economy, placing it on a more sustainable footing, both environmentally but also economically. They could have invested in an economy that was more productive, that invested in its people, that invested in education. We could have had an economy that invested in the new economy, which is green energy, clean technology. This would have been providing more lucrative jobs, which would have boosted our economy without trashing our environment. We could have rebuilt Christchurch smarter and made it one of the most sustainable cities in the world. The government had an opportunity. They were inheriting an economy which was broken, that had a huge number of challenges. But now we can measure how they've responded to the challenges, and it's clear they've failed. It's clear what they've turned out to be as poor economic managers. What we see from this government is not embracing the opportunity of the new economy. Instead, they're stuck looking towards the past, and in fact have purposefully undertaken a series of measures which have hurt our economy. One just needs to look at the stats. We know government deficit is over $8 billion. We know gross crown debt is in excess of $75 billion, around 38% of GDP. What's even worse is New Zealand's total foreign debt, which is more like 75% of GDP. When it comes to growth, the main measure that this government wants to measure itself, we're seeing the lowest growth in 50 years, highest unemployment rate since 1994. We're seeing inequality growing and a record number of Kiwis going overseas. Under the quantifiable measures of how this government's responded to those challenges, it's clear they're doing an abysmal job. The fact is, we've got opportunities, we've got options, but all this government's embarked down is the path of cut it, sell it, mine it, drill it and frack it. It's the only plan we're seeing from this government, and Grant Robertson quite rightly pointed out the only measures to increase tax revenue in New Zealand were to focus on the paper boys and the paper girls, the changes around postgraduate allowances, and then the increasing of prescription charge. We see the cut it. Now, because of those unaffordable tax cuts a few budgets ago, the government's dug themselves a gigantic fiscal hole. Those decisions, which led to the head of Westpac getting $5,000 extra a year, were fiscally unsustainable, fiscally reckless, and demonstrate what poor economic managers this government is. This tax cut hole has led to the government now requiring the second leg of the plan, which is to sell it. Now, it doesn't make sense, Mr Speaker, to be selling off these assets which are returning healthy dividends to the taxpayer. Now, if you listen to the government, on some days it's to pay down debt, on other days it's to invest in infrastructure, on other days to do different things. But it's mad under all those terms to be selling these highly productive assets. And now what we're seeing is that other, and mostly foreign companies, trying to play us off. Because of the government's asset sale agenda, we see job losses potentially as a result of Glenbrook Steel's decision. We're seeing Rio Tinto once again threaten to leave the country, trying to get lower electricity costs from Meridian. But what we're missing out is these healthy dividend flows in the future. So what this government's quite happy to do is actually spend taxpayer money to sell these assets. Now, the PR job this government wants to do, and the admin costs are around $120 million, but they won't tell the country because it's officially secret. We know the asset loyalty share offer could be on the order of $400 million. $400 million wealth transfer from Kiwis who already own those assets to the richest New Zealanders who can afford to purchase assets. Now, this loyalty share is simply welfare for Kiwis who need it the least, and this is what we should be calling it. It's welfare for those Kiwis who can already be affording to purchase these shares. We also know we're going to miss out on the dividends up to $100 million a year. Mr Speaker, there's a better way, and it doesn't involve drilling, mining and fracking our environment, which is the only plan this government's got left. Because even under the current economic conditions, this isn't going to benefit us in a massive way economically. Everyone assumes that we're going to strike it rich if we find a large oil or gas field, but it's simply that, an assumption not grounded in reality. This government has the 4th lowest royalty and tax rate in the world. This government has pages and pages of tax exemptions for the oil industry. This government's quite happy to put oil workers, 12 positions, on the skilled shortages immigration list to facilitate and expedite getting foreign workers into New Zealand. So what we know is there's going to be a huge environmental risk, which unfortunately the Conservation Minister isn't standing up for our marine and coastal environment, a huge environmental risk, a huge economic risk, but for 100% of that risk, this government's quite happy to sell us short with 5% royalty rates. We're going to see hardly any jobs, hardly any taxes, hardly any royalties, and we know the profits are going to flow offshore. So the only plan this government's got isn't even going to boost our economy. In fact, what we're going to see is it come with a massive opportunity cost. The opportunity cost is investing in the new economy, investing in the smart economy, investing in the green economy. Because internationally, this is where the lion's share of international investment is going. In fact, in 2010, for the first time, investment in clean energy outstripped fossil fuels. But instead, this government's looking to the 19th century for economic inspiration, not the 21st century, where we should be looking. The trains. The member Goldsmith from an inner city Auckland seat is arguing against the trains. Now what we see, this government is quite happy to borrow billions to throw at motorways with poor economic returns. Half of them have low benefit cost ratios, and that member is quite happy to keep with a third-rate rail system in his electorate, in his city, because he'd rather encourage urban sprawl, increased oil demand, and increased costs to council for his motorways. His motorways to nowhere, which this government's quite happy to borrow billions for. It's economically risky. It's economically restless and shows this government are terrible economic managers. What we should be embracing is the new economy, clean technology, green energy. Now, the home insulation scheme, which we're quite proud to be working with the government on, is a great example of that. We've worked with the government, despite we disagree with a whole host of their plans. The government says it's because we're against everything. We're only against stupid ideas, Mr Speaker. It just happened most of them come out of the National Party. But one good idea we were able to persuade them was the home insulation scheme. Now we've got 230,000 Kiwi homes, warmer, drier and healthier because of the Greens. We've seen 4,000 people directly employed. We've seen 10,400 people indirectly employed in downstream economic benefits because of that scheme. We've seen, if you laid the pink bats or other bats end on end, the amount that would stretch from Auckland to Invercargill and back again because of this green scheme. It's a great project, having real good big economic returns, really helping Kiwis, and it's a shame the government's not extending it, not providing more jobs, considering we've got the highest unemployment rate since 1994. As we saw in the Pure Advantage report, Mr Speaker, we're missing out on the race to be the ones who are embracing clean technologies, being at the forefront of the 21st century economy. It's a $6 trillion industry, they predict, but this government, as Grant Robertson pointed out, rubbished it. In an absolutely rude manner, rubbish the Kiwis behind it, who I think have the country's best interests at heart. Sadly, we've got this government picking winners. They're quite happy to help out their mates at Sky City to gamble on extra casinos, quite happy to help out their mates at MediaWorks and do whatever they can for the international foreign oil drillers. What we should be doing is extending the insulation scheme. We need a capital gains tax to rebalance our economy and put capital investment towards more productive enterprises, not more housing bubbles. We should be investing in greater research and development. We should be increasing the minimum wage to $15, helping those Kiwis growing up in poverty, those 200,000 Kiwi kids growing up in poverty. We should be putting a real price on carbon, not subsidising more than $1 billion greenhouse gas polluters in New Zealand, sending the wrong signal to keep investing in the 19th century economy, not on the 21st century economy. And we need to reprioritise our transport. We need to invest in safer roads. We need to invest in better public transport with real economic benefits, and this is how we're going to boost jobs, boost the economy, but most importantly, take the opportunity of the new economy, not throw it away. Kia ora, Mr Speaker.
Kia ora. Before I call the next members, just to advise the House that the next call is a split call with New Zealand First.